I'm excited for today because we're getting into the meat of things. Today we're going to talk about boy psychology, the psychology of young men and even adult men. Because let's face it, we don't actually mentally mature past any stage that we deem unnecessary. Because as human beings, our bodies grow with time and reach maturity at a certain age. But mentally, although we do reach a certain mental maturity at a certain age, it seems to me that actual true maturity in the mind and in the spirit is something that you actually got to work on for both men and women. And so today we're going to talk about boy psychology from the book King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover. And I will read through chapter 3 and leave some commentaries in between that would be interesting. You know what? It's a bit long of a chapter, so we're going to break it down into sub-chapters. All right. Let me take a good sip and let us begin. Chapter 3, Boy Psychology. The drug dealer, the ducking and diving political leader, the wife beater, the chronically crabby boss, the hotshot junior executive, the unfaithful husband, the company yes man, the indifferent graduate school advisor, the holier-than-thou minister, the gang member, the father who can never find the time to attend his daughter's school programs, the coach who ridicules his star athletes, the therapist who unconsciously attacks his clients' shining and seeks a kind of gray normalcy for them, the yuppie. All these men have something in common. They're all boys pretending to be men. They got that way, honestly, because nobody showed them what a mature man is like. Their kind of manhood is a pretense to manhood that goes largely undetected as such by most of us. We are continually mistaking this man's controlling, threatening, and hostile behaviors for strength. In reality, he is showing an underlying extreme vulnerability and weakness, the vulnerability of the wounded boy. The devastating fact is that most men are fixated at an immature level of development. These early developmental levels are governed by the inner blueprints appropriate to boyhood. When they are allowed to rule what should be adulthood, when the archetypes of boyhood are not built upon and transcended by the ego's appropriate accessing of the archetypes of mature masculinity, they cause us to act out of our hidden, to us but seldom to others, boyness, hidden boyness. We often talk with affection about boyishness in our culture. The truth is that the boy in each of us, when he is in the appropriate place in our lives, is actually the source of playfulness, of pleasure, of fun, of energy, of a kind of open-mindedness that is ready for adventure and for the future. But there is another kind of boyishness that remains infantile in our interactions within ourselves and with others when manhood is required. Now we're going to get into the structure of the archetypes. So there are multiple archetypes that form boy psychology, and these are it. Let's get into it. Each of the archetypal energy potential in the male psyche, in both its immature and its mature forms, has a triune or three-part structure, like a pyramid basically. And I will be posting that in the video, so hopefully you guys can see it whether here or there. But yeah. At the top of the triangle is the archetype in its fullness. At the bottom of the triangle, the archetype is experienced in what we call a bipolar dysfunctional or shadow form. In both its immature and mature forms, that is in both boy psychology and man psychology terms, this bipolar dysfunction can be thought of as immature in that it represents a psychological condition that is not integrated or cohesive. Lack of cohesion in the psyche is always a symptom of inadequate development. As the personality of the boy and then the man matures into its appropriate stage of development, the poles of these shadow forms become integrated and unified. Some boys seem more mature than others. They are accessing, no doubt unconsciously, the archetypes of boyhood more fully than are their peers. These boys have achieved a level of integration and inner unity that others have not. Other boys may seem more immature, even taking into account the natural immaturity of boyhood. For example, it is right for a boy to feel the heroic within himself, to see himself as a hero, like Naruto and Goku, and all shonen characters that we love. But many boys cannot do this and become caught in the bipolar shadow forms of the hero, which are the Grandmaster Bully or the Coward. Different archetypes come online at different developmental stages. The first archetype of the immature masculine to power up is the divine child. And the divine child is basically the stereotype or the archetype of Moses, Jesus, and any other children that were born to be destined for greatness in any mythical story or biblical story or legends and such, like Hercules or whatever, right? The precocious child and the Oedipal child are next. And Oedipal child, that's referring to Oedipus. I hope I'm saying it right, in the Greek mythology, Oedipus. And the last stage of boyhood is governed by the hero. So even being a hero is still boyish energy. Human development does not always proceed so neatly, of course. There are mixtures of the archetypal influences all along the way. Interestingly, each of the archetypes of boy psychology gives rise in a complex way to each of the archetypes of mature masculinity. The boy is father to the man. Thus, the divine child, modulated and enriched by life's experience, becomes the king. The precocious child becomes the magician. And the Oedipal child becomes the lover. And the hero becomes the warrior. The four archetypes of boyhood, each with a triangular structure, can be put together to form a pyramid that depicts the structure of the boy's emerging identity, his immature masculine self. The same is true of the structure of the mature masculine self. As we have suggested, the adult man does not lose his boyishness, and the archetypes that forms boyish foundation do not go away. Since archetypes cannot disappear, the mature man transcends the masculine powers of boyhood, building upon them rather than demolishing them. The resulting structure of the mature masculine self, therefore, is a pyramid over a pyramid, the mature pyramid over the immature pyramid. Though images should not be taken too literally, we are arguing that pyramids are universal symbols of the human self. We are now getting into the archetype of the divine child. The first, the most primal of the immature masculine energies is the divine child. We are all familiar with the Christian story of the birth of the baby Jesus. He is a mystery. He comes from the divine realm, born of a virgin woman. Miraculous things and events attend him. The star, the worshipping shepherds, the wise men from Persia. Surrounded by his worshippers, he occupies a central place not only in the stable, but in the universe. Even the animals, in popular Christmas songs, attend him. In the pictures, he radiates lights, hallowed by the soft, glistening straw he lies upon. Because he is God, he is almighty. At the same time, he is totally vulnerable and helpless, because, of course, he is a baby. No sooner is he born than the evil king Herod sniffs him out and seeks to kill him. He must be protected and spirited away to Egypt until he can be strong enough to begin his life's work, and until the forces that would destroy him have spent their energy. What is not often realized is that this myth does not stand alone. The religions of the world are rich with stories of the miraculous baby boy. The Christian story itself is modeled in part on the story of the birth of the great Persian prophet Zoroaster, complete with miracles in nature, magi, and threats on his life. In Judaism, there's the story of the baby Moses, born to be the deliverer of his people, to be the great teacher and the mediator between God and human beings. He was raised as a prince of Egypt, and yet in his first days, his life was threatened by an edict from the Pharaoh, and he was placed helpless and vulnerable in a reed basket and set adrift on the Nile. The model for this story was the much older legend of the infancy of the great Mesopotamian king, Sargon of Akkad. And from all over the world we hear legends about the wondrous infancy of the baby Buddha, the baby Krishna, the baby Dionysus. Even less known is that this figure of the divine baby boy, universal in our religions, is also universal inside ourselves. This can be seen from the dreams of men in psychoanalysis who, frequently, especially as they start to get better, dream about a baby boy who fills the dream with light and joy and a sense of wonder and refreshment. Often, too, when a man in therapy starts to feel better, the urge comes to him, perhaps for the first time in his life, to have children. These events are signals that something new and creative, fresh and innocent is being born within him. A new phase of his life is beginning. Creative parts of himself that he had been unconscious of are now thrusting upward into awareness. He is experiencing new life, but whenever the divine child within us makes itself known, attack from the Herod, within and without, is not far behind. New life, including new psychological life, is always fragile. When we feel this new energy manifesting within us, we need to move to protect it, because it is going to be attacked. A man may say in therapy, "I may actually be getting better." And right away, he may be answered by an inner voice that says, "Oh no, you're not. You know you can never be well." It is then time to get the fragile divine child to Egypt. Picking up on the theme of the Christmas story of the adoring animals and the angel's proclamation of peace on earth, we can see in the Greek myth of Orpheus that the divine child is the archetypal energy that prefigures the mature masculine energy of the king. The man god Orpheus sits at the center of the world playing his lyre and singing a song that brings all the animals of the forest to him. They are drawn by the song, prey and predator, and they come together around Orpheus in perfect harmony, the differences resolved, all of the opposites brought together into a world-transcending order, characteristic functions of the king, as we shall see. But this theme of the divine child bringing peace and order to the whole world, including the animal world, and animals, looked at psychologically, stand for our own often conflicting instincts, is not limited to ancient myths. A young man who had entered analysis once told us a story about an unusual event in his childhood. When he was probably 5 or 6 years old, he told us he went out into his backyard one spring afternoon, yearning for something he was too young to identify, but that, upon reflection later in his life, he saw what a yearning for inner peace and harmony and a sense of oneness with all things. He stood with his back to a huge oak tree which grew in his yard, and he began to sing a song he made up as he went along. It was hypnotic for him. He sang his longing, he sang his sadness, and he sang a kind of minor key deep joy. He sang a song of compassion for all living things. It was a kind of self and other soothing lullaby, a song to the baby boy. And pretty soon he began to notice that birds were coming to the tree, a few at a time, and continued singing. And as he sang, more birds came, whirling and circling around the tree and alighting in its branches. At last, the tree was filled with birds. It was alive with them. It seemed to him they had been lured by the beauty and compassion of the song. They confirmed his beauty and answered his yearning by coming to adore him. The tree became a tree of life, and refreshed by this confirmation of his inner divine child, he could go on. The divine child archetype that appears in our myths as Orpheus, as Christ, as the infant Moses, and as the various figures in the myths of many religions, in the dreams of men undergoing therapy, and in the actual experiences of boys appears to be in the hard wiring of us all. We may seem to be born with it, It goes by many names and is evaluated differently by the different schools of psychology. Usually, psychologists condemn it and, in effect, try to disconnect their clients from it. The important thing is to see that the divine child is built into us as a primal pattern of the immature masculine. Freud talked about it as the id, the it. He saw it as the primitive or infantile drives, immoral, forceful, and full of godlike pretensions. It was the underlying push of impersonal nature itself, concerned only with satisfying the unlimited needs of the child. The psychologist Alfred Adler talked about it as the hidden power drive in each of us, as a hidden superiority complex that covers our real sense of vulnerability, weakness, and inferiority. Remember, the divine child is both all-powerful, the center of the universe, and at the same time totally helpless and weak. In fact, this is the actual experience of infants. Heinz Kohut, who developed what he called self-psychology, talks about it as the grandiose self-organization, which is demanding of ourselves and others in a way that can never be fulfilled. The most recent psychoanalytic theory suggests that people who are possessed by or identified with this infantile grandiosity are expressing a narcissistic personality disorder. The followers of Carl Jung, however, viewed this divine child differently. They do not see it in largely pathological terms. Jungians believe that the divine child is a vital aspect of the archetypal self, the self with a capital S, because it is different from the ego, which is the self with a small s. For Jungians, this divine child within us is the source of life. It possesses magical, empowering qualities, and getting in touch with it produces an enormous sense of well-being, enthusiasm for life, and great peace and joy, as it did for the young boy under the oak tree. These differing schools of psychoanalysts, we believe, are each right. Each picks up on two different aspects of this energy, the one integrated and unified, and the other the shadow side. At the top of the triangular archetypal structure, we experience the divine child, who renews us and keeps us young and hot. At the base of the triangle, we experience what we call the high chair tyrant and the weakling prince. Alright, that's it everyone. We are going to get into what the high chair tyrant is and the weakling prince is in the next following episodes. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the divine child today and this archetype that exists within each of us. And you look forward to learning more about how the divine child can split into two personalities, which is, as we mentioned, high chair tyrant and the weakling prince. It was a pleasure to read this for you guys. Now, if you would like to leave a comment, click like and subscribe. And whether or not you enjoy the episode, just say whatever you want to say in the comments. I read each and every one of them. Thank you again for viewing, and have a good one, guys.